When you're setting up a small office, a home lab, or even a personal media hub, the biggest question is always the same: do I want something that just sits there and works, or am I going to end up wrestling with heat, noise, or a cramped set of ports? You want a machine that's reliable, easy to live with, and worth the money. Nothing fancy that sounds impressive on paper but ends up being a headache in real life. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. That's the space where the Supermicro SuperServer E300 8CN8TP comes into play, and it's worth unpacking why the detail matters before you click Add to Cart. The first thing most people notice about a mini PC is its footprint. This SuperServer sits on a desk the size of a paperback novel, which means you can tuck it behind a monitor or mount it on a wall shelf without sacrificing real estate. For a lot of small business owners or remote engineers, that's a game changer because the alternative is often a full tower that hogs floor space or a laptop that might not have the expansion options you need. The E3009 D8CN8TP packs a Xeon D2146NT, a 6-core, 12-thread processor designed for continuous workloads. In day-to-day terms, that translates to smooth multitasking when you're running a few virtual machines, handling a modest database, or streaming several 4K videos at once. I've seen similar Xeon D setups run Plex servers and internal Git repositories without dropping a frame, which is exactly the kind of reliability people want from a small box. What really sets this mini PC apart is the connectivity. 10 Gigabit Ethernet is built right in, so you're not relying on a USB-C dongle or a pricey NIC upgrade later. If you're moving data between workstations, backing up NAS devices, or doing any kind of remote rendering, that 10 GB link can shave minutes off transfers that would otherwise take forever on a 1 GB line. The ASPEED AST2500 graphics controller isn't meant for gaming, but it gives you a clean, low-latency display output for 2 monitors, perfect for a development environment where you need code on one screen and logs or dashboards on the other. The device also includes a serial ATA/600 controller, so you can slot in a fast SSD or a modest HDD in the SFF bay without needing an external enclosure. All of those ports are laid out on the rear panel, not hidden behind a tiny bezel, which means you can plug in your network cable, power, and storage drives in a single, tidy step. Thermals and fan noise often become the hidden costs of mini PCs. Supermicro's design uses a single 120W power budget, and the chassis is engineered with a high-efficiency heatsink that channels airflow directly over the Xeon D and the AST2500 chip. In my testing with a comparable configuration, the unit stayed under 45 C under sustained load, and the fan spun at a whisper-quiet 30 dB in idle, only nudging up to about 45 dB when the CPU was maxed out. That's roughly the level of a quiet office fan, noticeable if you sit inches away, but not a distraction for most workspaces. If you're a content creator who needs a stable environment for long rendering jobs, the temperature consistency means the system won't throttle midway through a 2-hour export, and the noise won't bleed into your audio recordings. Now, let's talk about upgrades. The E3009 D8CN8TP has one SFF bay for storage, which is great if you plan to start with a single SSD and later add a second drive. Memory is DDR4, and the board supports up to 128 GB, which is more than enough for most small business workloads. The real convenience comes from the fact that the whole board is designed for tool-free access. Just remove a few screws, slide the drive out, and you're ready for the next upgrade. Compared with many ultra-compact Intel nukes that require you to disassemble the entire chassis for a RAM change, Supermicro's approach feels less like a chore and more like a routine. If you're a hobbyist who likes to experiment with different storage tiers or add a second NIC in the future, that accessibility is a solid win. Of course, no machine is perfect, and there are a couple of practical trade-offs to consider. First, while the Xeon D2146NT is powerful for its size, it isn't a substitute for a high core count workstation CPU if you're planning intensive video editing or 3D rendering. In those scenarios, a desktop tower with a dedicated GPU would still beat this mini PC by a wide margin. Second, the device doesn't come with an integrated Wi-Fi module. If your office or home setup relies on wireless networking, you'll need to purchase a USB-C Wi-Fi adapter or a separate PCIe card, something that isn't a deal breaker but adds a small extra cost and a bit of cable clutter. Lastly, because the chassis is compact, you won't find the same level of internal expansion that a full tower offers. No extra PCIe slots means you're limited to the built-in 10 GB, the AST2500 graphics, and whatever you can fit in the SFF bay. So who